First of all, we'll invite members to confirm the minutes of the last meeting. Colleagues, any question on the minutes? If not, we'll have the minutes confirmed. And then information papers issued since the last meeting. The Secretariat has received 3 letters from our colleagues. First of all, Mr. Tang Ka-piu mentioned the increase in the admission fee of the Ocean Park. There's already a reply from the administration which has already been distributed to members for reference. Colleagues, any follow-up comments? If not, there are 2 other letters. Well, Mr. Deputy, I'm a new member. For the so-called public utilities, if they are to increase admission fees, was there a practice to have a discussion in LegCo? Because this time there are suddenly suggesting an increase in admission fees. Well, in fact, the admission fees will be increased on the 1st of September. Can we still follow up? Well, unless you request an additional agenda item on the issue, well, it depends on colleagues' views and see whether or not we have a time slot for that. Colleagues, any comments? Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman? Yes, Mr. Wong Kok Heng. Mr. Chairman, I believe the Ocean Park is related to livelihood, tourism, and many local residents will be affected. Of course, we cannot discuss the issue today. I suggest that it be put on the list of outstanding items for a discussion in the next session. All right, so that's Mr. Wong Kok Heng's suggestion. Any other comments from members? Dr. Fernando Chang. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I agree. This is related to people's livelihood, is worthy of our concern. I think we should have a discussion in the next session. Besides, can this panel write a letter to the Ocean Park to express our concern? We should suggest that in future, be it the Ocean Park or the Disneyland, if they are to have a major adjustment on fees and charges, they should come to the LegCo first. All right, so if there's no further comment, we'll put it on the list of outstanding items. And once there's a time slot, they'll be invited to come and give an explanation to the LegCo. And then there are 2 more letters, one from Mr. Tang Ka-piu and one from Mr. Gary Fan, in relation to the management system of the aviation matter. We can't discuss that today, so we'll ask the Secretariat to follow up with the administration. Upon receiving the response from the administration, we'll issue it to members. All right, no more comments. Then we'll move on to the update on follow-up actions arising from the report of the Commission of Inquiry into the collision of vessels near Lamma Island. Welcome, government representatives. I won't read out your names because we're all familiar with them. So, administration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. Today we've submitted a paper to follow up on the follow-up actions after our last report in May 2013. Recently, the Marine Department adopted a number of measures on vessel safety and navigation safety. And they have 2 major expert studies, and we've already got the result. I'll defer to the Director of Marine to explain the details of the follow-up actions to you. Mr. Chairman, members, good morning. In the past few months, the Marine Department spared no effort in follow-up on the recommendations of the COI, and we detailed the implementation plan and discussed with the industry. Our objective is to adopt the recommendations as soon as possible. In the first stage, we'll proceed with improvement measures that do not need legislative amendments. First of all vessels carrying more than 100 passengers should have a lookout on the bridge in addition to the coxswain during the hours of darkness and in reduced visibility. And high-speed crafts should have a lookout at all times. Second, all passenger vessels carrying more than 100 passengers should have a muster list so that every member of the crew is aware of his duties in the event of emergency. Third, apart from catering for general emergency situation, the manning required of specific emergency situations, including collision, grounding, fire, or abandonment of ship, has to be taken into account in determining the minimum safe number of crew for a ferry. Fourth, improving signages and directives relevant to life jackets on board, such as printing the name of the vessel on the life jackets, putting on sufficient signs to show the locations of life jackets, or making use of video or graphic display. Fifth, requiring watertight doors to be fitted with alarms so that when they're open or closed, an alert will be issued. We hope to complete discussion with the trade within the third quarter of this year and to amend the Code of Practice in September. And then there are other proposed improvement measures that require legislative amendment that will take longer and more collaboration with the trade. Therefore, the Marine Department is discussing with the trade on these improvement measures. As regards costs and other issues, the trade has expressed worries. For example, the report of the COI recommends that launches and ferries permitted to carry more than 12 passengers should be required to carry a very high-frequency radio, and vessels permitted to carry more than 100 passengers should be equipped with AIS, automatic identification systems, collision avoidance radar, and VHF radio. We agree that these equipment have their respective functions and can enhance marine safety on various circumstances. It's also proposed that new candidates applying for coxswain Grade 1 certificates should be required to operate certain specific vessels and be subject to a practical operational assessment using simulator. The trade is worried that this may discourage newcomers and aggravate the current manpower shortage problem. The Marine Department is of the view that such assessment would be useful to enhance the present written oral examinations in establishing coxswain's abilities. And then there are proposed rest arrangements for crew working on local passenger carrying vessels. The crew unions support the proposal, while ferry operators have concerns about recruitment difficulties, rise in staff cost, and the change of ferry schedule as a result. They'd like to maintain the current 1 day on and 1 day off arrangement. The MD considers that it is essential to enhance the safety of passenger carrying vessels, so safety is of top priority. We'll discuss with the trade and the details, including the implementation timetables. Besides, the Marine Department MD has commissioned Lloyd's Register and an overseas expert to carry out an independent audit review of its procedures. Well, basically, this audit review indicates that the quality management system of the MD generally complies with the requirements of ISO 9000 in 2008. There's no major non-conformity identified. Nevertheless, 4 less serious non-conformities and 19 opportunities for improvements are found. MD has already taken action to rectify the non-conformities and to follow up on the suggestions for improvements. There's also another study to compare the safety requirements on local vessels and vessels in other jurisdictions. The result is that when compared with other ports, Hong Kong's port is very busy and the number of passengers carried is the highest. For every nautical mile, it is safe to take a vessel in Hong Kong waters. The MD has also put forth improvements on marine safety. These proposals are basically in line with the 10 medium and long-term measures recommended by the COI report and the marine consultancy firm. We have discussed with the steering committee on systemic reform of the Marine Department. Basically, there are 2 areas of improvements proposed. First of all, about systemic issues, and then about internal operation. We'll continue to discuss with the steering committee on solutions. I have to reiterate that the MD is very much determined to reform its tasks on marine safety. We'll advance with time and be dedicated to marine safety. Thank you. Thank you, Director. 7 colleagues are queuing up. 5 minutes each, all right? Oh, 8. Number 1, Mr. Stephen Ho. Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, Chairman. I'm not a panel member, but I'm very concerned about marine safety and the collision incident. So I'd like to ask the administration certain questions. I heard from outsiders that the administration has employed marine expert to compile a study report. However, they're not very confident in these experts. One of them is Dr. Neville Anthony Armstrong. He was actually a contract staff member many years ago with the administration. So I'd like to know the relationship between the administration and this expert. Will you be putting a stumbling block in front of yourself by employing him? And then there's no dedicated response to the report. However, with strong objection from the industry, 10 improvement measures were proposed. So, in the interim, how much opinion have you accepted from the trade? Third, given the acute shortage of manpower in the trade, how are you going to assess the impact of these 10 improvement measures on the trade? For example, ferry services, will they be affected, and to what extent will the public be affected? Thank you.
Director. Thank you, Chairman. About the engagement of an Australian expert. Well, it wasn't the Marine Department that engaged the expert, but rather the independent investigation committee. And as I understand, as for his previous work experience, it was in around the 1970s that he worked in the Marine Department for a period of time as a contract staff. Afterwards, he left the government's Marine Department. That's what I know. Chairman, to follow up on this point, we are not very confident in this friend because one lifebuoy can only save one person, and then several weeks later he changed this version and said that one buoy can save 2 persons. So we have doubts about this report. Director? Well, we understand that during the hearing he said that one live buoy should not be used to rescue two. We noted his comments, and he also provided some information at the hearing, and we also noted the difference between the reality and his version. If you also agree that what he says may not be 100% correct, will you consider engaging another independent consultant? Well, on this point, we don't have any thoughts yet. We will look at the Commission's comment and see whether the comments are justified. So on this point, we aren't considering the action to be taken yet. But in relation to the papers submitted at the hearing, it also showed our response. Follow-up. So has he taken on board any views from the sector? And also the point on manpower, Chairman. On manpower, I understand that the sector has expressed their concern, and as far as safety is concerned, we think that this is more important. So our primary consideration is passenger safety, and we'll continue to discuss with the sector. As for consultation, last November we started consulting the sector on arrangements. In particular, there would be 5 recommendations which we are taking forward without any necessary legislative amendments. And these measures have come by after 5 meetings, and we'll continue to discuss with them. So, Chairman, he hasn't answered me what views have been taken on board, what views of the sector have been taken on board. So 8 meetings, have they taken on board the views? Please queue up again for the second round. Your time is up. Mr. Wong Kwok Heng. Thank you, Chairman. A question for the administration. For improvement measures to be implemented during the first phase, they will be implemented within the 3rd quarter this year, namely around September. So safety is of paramount importance. After the vessel collision incident near Lamma Island, we understand that we must attach importance to safety. So my question for the administration is, by the 3rd quarter of this year, by September, can the Marine Department guarantee that these improvement measures to be implemented during the first phase can indeed be implemented? Because we're heading towards the end of July, and September is not far away, and we'll still be in recess in September. So my question is whether the department can really implement these improvement measures, and whether when next session of this council begins, the Marine Department will come back and report to us. The second question is that I'd like to thank the director for meeting with the bereaved family members of the deceased in the collision incident. And at the meeting, they were very concerned about the department's investigation, and the department already gave an undertaking, and the department has also set up a committee to follow up on the matter. And would the administration please respond at this meeting? and tell us whether you can give an undertaking to address the demands of the bereaved family members. Director. Now, about the improvement measures to be implemented during the first phase, no legislative amendments will be necessary. In September, well, we expect we'll be able to finish discussion with the sector so that by the end of September we can revise our code of practice. Having done this, well, there are measures that can be implemented only after some time. For example, on increasing manpower, this will be implemented 1 year after revision of the code of practice and will allow time for the companies to recruit fresh blood and conduct training. What undertaking can you give to the victims? Perhaps I can take this question to respond to Mr. Wong Kok-heng's question. The Secretary earlier met with the relatives and family members, and there was an investigation on any misconduct or mismanagement on the part of government officials, and the committee had been set up in the second half of June, and the committee comprised 6 members, including a principal executive officer and other executive officers, and the PS under these THB would also be in charge of the committee. They are analyzing all the information, including the papers submitted to the committee and also the evidence arising from the Commission of Inquiry. They look particularly into matters like any misconduct or mismanagement, and they will continue to look into all the information and conduct a comprehensive investigation in a fair and impartial manner. And the committee has already informed the relevant, or the investigation team has already informed the relevant individuals for assistance in the investigation. I hope that the investigation team in charge of this matter can really act impartially and not to defend the government departments, so that a very clear account can be given to family members. Next, Mr. Tang Ka-piu. I'm sorry, mix up your name. It's okay. Well, I see here a document table. That's a joint conference for the marine sector and the local vessel sector. And it seems that they are, what they say is contrary to your paper. Now, about medium to long-term measures, well, a consensus might not be reached easily. But even for short-term measures, the sector has different views. But like Mr. Wong Kok-heng said just now, safety is of paramount importance, and we must not make any compromise. Now, this incident affects the whole of Hong Kong. Now, what we expect is that the local vessel industry or the maritime safety of Hong Kong should be improved. Every time only the sector is being consulted, and of course the sector will have concerns about costs. We hope that for short-term measures, they can be implemented as soon as possible, within 6 months. For medium to long-term measures, I think that there should be a consultation for a period of 3 to 4 months, so that different stakeholders, including members of the public or even the commerce and industrial sector or even the agricultural sector, can participate. Now, if you only consult the marine sector or the local vessel industry, then they will maintain their position because of costs. So my question is whether you will conduct a public consultation. Para 11 of the paper, that's my second point, mentions an independent audit report conducted by the Lloyd's Register. It reveals no major non-conformity, and nevertheless, for less serious non-conformities, 19 opportunities for improvements are found. So although there are no major non-conformities, these minor non-conformities can be disastrous. Even for an aircraft engineer, he will find the loss of a screw unacceptable. So what is your view on these minor non-conformities? P.S. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Tang, for your question. Mr. Tang asks whether any issue will be subject to public consultation. Well, during this exercise, Dr. Pryke and Dr. Armstrong, the two experts engaged, submitted over 70 recommendations. And these follow-up actions have come by after discussion with the sector. That's why we have some improvement measures to be implemented in the short term, and also some medium and longer term measures which involve more complex matters. And the views of the sector have also been taken on board, and this reflects the discussion process that we have had with the sector. And in the future, the Marine Department will continue to liaise with the sector and discuss in detail how other measures can be implemented. As for public consultation, well, this matter can be looked at from two levels. On technical details, whether some figures or empirical data should be revised, I think the Marine Department should discuss with the sector. As for issues involving a more extensive concern, like third-party marine liability insurance, now if after discussion legislative amendments are necessary, we will report back to this panel, and by then we can heed the views of members. If members by then think that a more extensive consultation should be conducted, then we keep an open mind. Thank you. Well, I hope that the department will not consider a public consultation only on the basis of insurance matters, because it involves maritime safety involves everyone. Mr. Yik, I received a petition letter just now downstairs. It reflects the views of members of the sector. According to the paper, you have had 5 meetings with the sector. They raised a lot of issues, and some members have been asked by members what views have been taken on board. The sector is of the view that you have not considered any of their views. Mr. Stephen Ho just now also queried the applicability of the experts' recommendations on the local industry. Now, Mr. Tang Ka-piu already said that definitely the sector will be opposing the improvement measures because of rising costs. Now, the sector supports improving maritime safety. But what we're discussing here is what money cannot solve. After the meeting on the 19th, and you rolled out with a number of improvement measures to be implemented, and they're very dissatisfied. The problem is that for the lookout, what are the requirements? What are the responsibilities? How about the training, number of hours of training, etc.? No information at all. Now you floated a paper and you say that this measure will be implemented in a year's time. And according to the sector, for several years they have been unable to recruit sufficient manpower. So this problem cannot be resolved by money. So what should we do? Public services would be affected. So first of all, I'd like to reflect on behalf of the sector the dissatisfaction against the Marine Department, and secondly, I ask for a public hearing so that the sector's representatives can come and express their views to you whether those recommendations should apply to the local industry. Well, it's for us to decide whether to hold a public hearing. Director. Well, at a subcommittee held on the 17th of July, at that meeting, we discussed the improvement measures, and one issue was about lookout, and there are other issues like life jackets on board and and a muster list, and the alarms to be fitted to the watertight doors, etc. It's hoped that the discussion or consultation can be completed by the end of September. As for minimum number of crew members and the requirement of a lookout, a life jacket, etc. In fact, after the accident, we have been discussing with the sector, and they have expressed their concern on the shortage of manpower and the succession problems and difficulties in recruiting crew members. Some 70 ordinary crew members will have to be recruited if this improvement measure is implemented. And for ordinary crew, they should be able to perform the role as lookout. Of course, they need to undergo some training, but the training will not be too specific or complicated. So the government is also concerned about this issue, and we have been discussing with various parties like the VTC and trade associations, etc., to come up with a proposal to improve the recruitment or employment situation. And from a training fund, I'm sorry, the training fund is not about training frontline workers. Now, what I want to say is that the sector is willing to go ahead, but the problem and the biggest obstacle they're facing is about recruiting manpower. And what about the functions and responsibilities of the lookout? What if the master doesn't heed the lookout's advice? And what about judging the distance? At sea, I think training is absolutely necessary. Ordinary crew can't take up this task. Can something more be done to training due to the dissatisfaction of the sector? We can continue to explore with the sector and explain anything that's unclear to the sector, our arrangement, in particular in relation to the lookout and his relationship with the master.
Yeah. I agree with Mr. Yek, Chairman, because the report appears to be very comprehensive. It has considered all the relevant issues. But when it comes to the operations level and the question of responsibility, I think it would be the people in the trade who would know best. If we simply implement all the proposals in the report, then the responsibility will fall on the trade, and if anything should go wrong, they will have to bear the brunt of So I think we should conduct a public hearing to listen to the views of the trade. Or we can also listen to the views of the tourism ministry on this issue. Now my question is this. Recently it has been reported that sampans which are installed with motors, the leasing of these sampans are not subject to regulation. So regarding the regulation of such vessels, the safety and the insurance coverage for these vessels, what are the requirements and what measures do you have to protect the safety of the passengers? Thank you. All vessels for lease will need to be subject to inspection. Furthermore, it would need to be covered by a third-party liability insurance. I think the vessels referred to by Mr. Yik are small pleasure crafts for lease, and normally they would operate near shore, and they typically would carry 2 passengers. As far as safety is concerned, they are regulated by the relevant ordinances. Regarding insurance requirements, since it is a vessel for hire, they would need to come up with arrangements for third-party liability insurance. Chairman, we read from some reports that these vessels are not really subject to regulation. I mean, they can either have or not have life jackets. So are there any specific instructions for passengers before they board? Are they informed about what they should do in the event of an accident and whether there are insurance coverage? These sampans are motorized and therefore they should be subject to regulation. They're not like those sampans which are simply rowed manually. After reading such a report, has the government followed up on this question? Thank you, Chairman. Well, these vessels are Category 4 vessels. When they're being used, they need to comply with the guidelines. When these vessels are rented, I'm sure the operators will explain to the passengers about the operation of the vessel and the safety measures in place. At seminars and meetings, we have had communication with the trade. I'm sure we can step up the dissemination of such information. I hope the Bureau will really do this seriously so that there won't be any accidents. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, Chairman, I'm concerned about your system. In your paper, you refer to the word, you say HARTS does not apply to Hong Kong, while the trade said that the Marine Department is now conducting, a consultation on the possible use of HARTS, but the trade is saying that it doesn't really help. Mr. Yik also pointed out that the trade is difficulty in recruiting staff. In the event of heavy fog and poor visibility, if the visibility is very poor, even the lookout may not be able to help a lot. You would need to rely on technology. There are now 2 systems. You say the HART system doesn't work in Hong Kong. The IAS, according to Trey, also doesn't work. Could you explain that? Thank you. Regarding the AIS system, this is the system which can help the vessels to enable other vessels to detect the presence of this vessels while it is moving. The ocean-going vessels will be able to detect the direction and the speed of the vessels equipped with the AIS. When the vessel is installed with an AIS system, other vessels can take appropriate action to avoid or to prevent collisions. So as far as this equipment is concerned, they can help enhance safety of marine traffic. Can you explain why the trade said that the AIS system does not really is not very effective in preventing collision. In your paper, you've not explained why the HART system is not suitable for Hong Kong. The HART system is a system adopted in Singapore at the moment. My understanding of this system is that this is an internal security system. It can differentiate the different vessels at sea, so they can differentiate whether or not a vessel is a Singaporean vessel, and if not, they will be able to tell. But the function of the HART system is not the same as the AIS system. The AIS system will provide information to vessels regarding the names of the vessel, the registration number, and the speed of the vessel traveling at the time, and its direction. So there will be live, the data will be updated live. There will also be other information regarding the cargoes loaded on the vessel and so on. All such information could be provided. So the IAS therefore has more functions. I'm sure there are many busy ports in the world. Have you tried to find out what systems are being used in those ports? You say one of the systems that doesn't work for Hong Kong, the other system, according to trade, also doesn't work. Well, the HART system is only used in Singapore at the moment. It's a system developed by Singapore. AIS is an international system. Other than the local vessels operating in Hong Kong, where they intended to implement the system. The AIS system is already an international system. Well, ocean-going vessels aside, in the event of the Lam incident, we're talking about collision of two small vessels. So what other systems are being used in other ports in respect of such vessels? For local vessels, it varies from place to place. For example, in the UK and Australia, in Sydney Harbour, for example, and other ports in the UK, in Southampton, for example. Some of the systems use the AIS system, but not all vessels use the same system. Normally it would be vessels carrying more passengers which are required to use the system. The AIS system requires ocean-going vessels to be installed with such a system. But it's not the case that all vessels in other ports are required to use the AIS system. Only in Singapore do they require all vessels to be equipped with the HART system. The AIS system, I think Singapore is now preparing to introduce the AIS system. Are there only two systems in the world, the HARTs and the AIS system? Could both be used? Are there other systems available other than these two? I don't think there are. Basically, these are the two major systems. HARTs is a system only used in Singapore. Okay, I think we finished the first round of questions. Two members are not here. For the second round, we have Mr. Tang Ka-piu and Mr. Yik Chi Ming. And if no other members wish to speak, I'll draw a line here. 3 minutes. Thank you. First of all, Mr. Yik has already suggested that we should invite the deputations to come to speak to us, and I agree. I don't want the meeting to be confined to your meeting with the trade, because we think the public should have a chance to participate. The trade can come forward, the unions as well, and also the organizations or district council representing the outlying islands should also come forward to express their views. Regarding the short-term improvement measures, the trade has already expressed their opinion regarding these three measures. The question is whether or not they could be implemented and when they should be implemented. And my second question earlier is in respect of paragraph 11. That is, the Lloyd's Register mentioned that there are 4 less serious non-conformities and 19 opportunities for improvements. How are you going to deal with that? Bureau? Deputy Secretary. Thank you. First of all, members suggested that we should invite deputations to express views. We will be willing to work with the council if the panel so wishes. Regarding those measures, I understand that the Marine Department is still talking to trade about how those measures should be implemented. According to our paper, we will be amending the Code of Practice in September this year. 6 months after that, three of the measures will be implemented. The other 2 will only be implemented 12 months after the amendment of the code, namely 12 months afterwards. We will try our best to talk further to the trade regarding what difficulties will be faced by the trade in implementing these measures and how the problems could be resolved. And if they encounter any difficulties, we'll be listen to the trade. Mr. Tang Ka-piu, you've not answered my supplementary question. How would you comment on the 4 less serious non-conformities and the 19 opportunities for improvements? Regarding the independent audit conducted by the Lloyd's Register, in the report it suggested that in the quality assurance system of the Marine Department, it basically complies with the ISO requirement, and there are no major or serious nonconformities. Of course, they've pointed out 4 less serious nonconformities. The Marine Department has also noticed that there are 9 opportunities for improvements. The Marine Department has already taken steps to follow up on the recommendations. So have you all along been satisfied with your own operations and the implementation of the code? I don't think we can say that. In fact, certain minor nonconformities and areas for improvements have been identified. Certainly there is room for us to improve. I see that Mr. Uchiwai has now returned to the chamber, so I'll give you 5 minutes. Thank you. I'm sorry I was attending another meeting next door. After reading the report, I'd like to ask 2 questions. First of all, in your preliminary response, I understand that there are certain less serious nonconformities, and the Marine Department said you will strictly follow the procedures. Now, could you clarify what do you mean by the procedures that you will strictly follow? Are they the old procedures or the new procedures? In the audit report regarding these nonconformities, how can you ensure that you can implement the improvements under your new procedures, and what is your timetable for implementation? Do you need to come up with new arrangements to do that? And the next question is why in the past you have been so careless or negligent and that you've not enforced the code stringently? And have you tried to find out why? And secondly, the report also mentioned that the Marine Department will look into the recommendations and consult the trade. You've said this many times in the report. So I'd like to ask whether, in terms of studying the report and consulting the trade, do you have a timetable to do that, and when will you come back and give an account of what you've done to us? Regarding studying the suggestions and consulting the trade, what would be the basis for that? As colleagues have pointed out, public safety is something that we cannot compromise on. So I'd like to know, in your consultation, have you put public safety as the overriding issue? Deputy Secretary or Director? Chairman, I'll defer to my Deputy Director to answer the question. Thank you. Good morning, members. Mr. Wu's question was in respect of the report by audit report by the Lloyd's Register, and they highlighted 4 less serious nonconformities and 9 opportunities for improvements. In this regard, we have already reviewed all our codes to see whether they need to be further enhanced. And if they were to be enhanced, then other than requiring the responsible person to put down the proper records, we also have an internal audit mechanism to verify what he has done. We will strictly follow the procedures. Regarding the 19 opportunities for improvement, again, we'll deal with it in the same manner. In the internal review, we will also, seek to make improvements. When Marine Department said they will strictly follow the code, the deputy directors told us that they've already put in place an internal review mechanism which were not present previously, and this is something new. I hope you can give us more details as to how you intend to implement that. And secondly, regarding the follow-up, you say that you need to study the recommendations and consult the trade and the benchmark investigation. I'd like to ask whether or not you will put public safety as the overriding standard when you consult the trade. That is correct, Chairman. Safety is of paramount importance. And based on this principle, we will enhance the safety of marine vessels. Do you have a specific timetable, and what measures are you now working on? What is on the list are the items that you will consult the trade on. The benchmark study to be conducted by the consultant is basically the consultation on the recommendations by the Commission of Inquiry, and also is similar to our report. Mr. Ximing, first of all, I'd like to declare that I'm a director of staff area and therefore part of the trade. Regarding the short-term proposed measures, A, B, C, D, E, the trade doesn't have any comment on 3 of those. But regarding D and C, regarding manpower requirements, they want the government to consider this. That is, after this proposed improvement measures will only be implemented after they are able to recruit sufficient manpower. Mr. Sin Kai has expressed his concern about the AI system, but the department has not come out with such an answer. I hope that we can have a public hearing to invite the trade and listen so that we can listen to their views regarding the system. My understanding is that the AI system is not very effective for harbor operations, and there are also speed limits. So how I'll leave it to the trade to explain to members how whether the functions are good enough. Mr. Yiu also talk about who should be responsible by requiring the passengers to put on life jackets. That is the duty of the coxswain, but the coxswain has to drive the vessel. How can he ensure that at all times these children will also wear the life jackets?
If you say that the coxswain is to be held liable, is that correct? All these details should be discussed between the trade and the department should listen to the trade's views. After so many meetings, there's no reaction from you at all. You just want to follow the MD's report and adopt all measures proposed therein. Director, concerning the AIS, as I mentioned just now, in terms of provision of information and data, the system is definitely helpful to the vessels, such that we will be able to trace the status and data of the vessels concerned. We did conduct a few rounds of consultation with the trade. Up to very recently, we had made progress together with the trade. As for other details, we are willing to continue to discuss with the trade and resolve the views and concerns of the trade and operators. We'll continue to do that. Mr. Chairman, I hope that this meeting will agree to hold a public hearing. If the communication between the department and the trade has been effective, the trade would not have put up such a request. Mr. Chairman, for the new guidelines, will ferry services be affected? Has the administration conducted any assessment? Because manpower increases, etc., are involved. Director, under the proposed new arrangements, the first few to be adopted include the increase proposed for lookouts, and 70-odd people would have to be employed, such that during the hours of darkness and in reduced visibility, more assistance will be required to enhance the lookout function. The other improvements will include arrangements for emergencies. Tables, etc., will have to be compiled. For example, as for life jackets, since the last incident, all parties concerned have done a lot. Only minor follow-up work will be required. There shouldn't be any major problems. Mr. Chairman, that means they did carry out an assessment. After the implementation of the guidelines, if in the market there's inadequate supply of manpower to satisfy the requirements, how will that be handled? Some ferries or ferry companies may have to operate illegally. Will you have a grace period? Do you have any plan to assist them in recruiting staff? Mr. Chairman, concerning recruitment, for the lookouts proposed, only certificate holders will be required. They're not really professionals or technical personnel. As regards training, we'll talk to the trade to see how we can assist them. For lookout tasks, the coxswains are doing lookout work every day. As for the proposed increases in lookouts, the operators now have certain lookouts, and there are actual arrangements to allow the lookouts to report to the coxswain. If necessary, we're willing to continue to discuss with the trade to clarify their queries and doubts. Of course, for a coxswain, you cannot just find an ordinary person to serve as the coxswain, because the coxswain has to monitor all situations and do a lot more work. I hope that in future you can spell out more clearly the requirements for lookouts, such that ferry companies, etc., won't be breaching the law unknowingly. Just now, a member asked for a public hearing. I'd like to put forth this request to you and leave it to members to decide. Or perhaps I will not listen to your views. I think your views were very clear just now. How many are in favor of a public hearing? 3? Oh, please raise your hands again. 4. Those against? No. Abstentions? No? I'll leave it to the Secretariat to check the time slots and make the relevant arrangements. You'll be notified. So thank you very much, officials, for attending this meeting. So much for this item. Next, latest progress in taking forward the reform of the new regulatory regime for the tourism sector in Hong Kong. Please invite the officials to come in.
參加今日嘅會議嘅呢，就係有蘇錦良局長。
In attendance today with Mr. Gregory So, the Secretary, Mr. Philip Yong, Commissioner for Tourism, and Ms. Rosanna Law, the Deputy Commissioner for Tourism. Welcome. Secretary, if you are ready, please first of all brief us on the paper. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, in February 2012, the Administration on the Operation and Regulatory Regime for the Tourism Industry worked out a plan and reported to this panel, informing members of the reform proposals. A travel industry authority, TIA, was proposed so as to set out requirements for the regulatory framework as well as the lowest thresholds for certain matters. With the members' support in the past year or so on the new regulatory system and detailed arrangements, we consulted the industry, and together with the Travel Industry Council, the TIC, we explored its future public functions. In the paper, we've already set out the proposals for the detailed arrangements, including the composition of the future TIA, the new regulatory system, and through the guarantee money system, how we're going to operate, appointment of members, enhancement of thresholds, statutory pass, issuance arrangements for tour guides and tour escorts, etc., as well as the financial arrangements for the TIA. I won't repeat these details, but I have to report on the views received on guarantee money. The details are already in Annex A. Under the new regulatory system, we suggest that for inbound travel agencies, they have to pay $800,000 of guarantee money to the TIA. For the licensed travel agencies, for mainland travel tours, they need to pay the guarantee money of $800,000. We hope that with this higher threshold of guarantee money, it will only apply to designated shopping tours and inbound tours. Because if the definition is too narrow, there will be room or loophole in the laws, thus creating difficulties in law enforcement and difficulties for the TIA. So it is necessary to have a broader definition on inbound travel groups. All travel agencies receiving mainland groups will have to be covered. Such an arrangement will unavoidably affect the quality and honest Hong Kong tours and other mainland inbound tour group businesses. Given the proposed $800,000 of guarantee money as well as the new definition for inbound mainland tour groups, the trade is very concerned. We're willing to discuss with the trade and react to their views on how to minimize the impact on the industry without sacrificing the effectiveness of the new regulatory regime. I have to emphasize that the ultimate scheme will have to balance the interest of the public, the industry, and the LegCo. We must not be lopsided in our final arrangements. At this stage, for the new regulatory system as well, we are doing consultation and legislative drafting will address the concerns of the industry. We hope that within 2014 we'll be able to submit the bill to the LegCo. And soonest, on 2015 or later, the TIA will be able to operate. Finally, I have to reiterate that while drafting the new law, under the new regulatory system, the new arrangements, etc., will be put forth to the industry for consultation. Mr. Tang Ka-piu, Mr. Sin Chung Kai, Mr. Michael Tan, Mr. Yu Si-ming, Mr. Paul Tse, and Mr. Frankie Yik, Mr. Wong Ting Kwong, and Mr. Wu, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, have expressed their wish to speak. I'll draw a line there. Because Mr. Wu Chi-wai's name was put together with Mr. Frankie Yik, so I read his name wrongly. Mr. Tang Ka-piu, the FTU keeps an open mind on this paper. We attach importance to the interests of the industry members. In the brewing stage of the TIA, we repeatedly said that in the past 3 or 4 years, for Hong Kong people joining outbound to groups, it's becoming more and more common that there are no tour escorts. District councillors and MACs received a lot of publicity materials from listed travel agencies and very small travel agencies on 2 groups with no tour escort. In the past, only very short-term tours like those in Human, etc., were covered, but now even Guangxi, Hainan Island, and Thailand are involved. And for several nights, there was no tour escort for one tour group of Hong Kong people for 5 days in one recent incident. If there's no tour escort, how can we guarantee the quality of the tour, safety matters, etc.? And if there's an emergency, how such a group of Hong Kong people will be protected and receive immediate care? In the recent Guangxi incident, people asked, why is it that the media only learned of the incident on the following morning of the incident? The TIA will directly regulate the tour escorts, but nothing is mentioned about requiring travel agencies to provide a tour escort for every group, every tour group. If it is not expressly stipulated, if there are no express provisions, you're implying that tour escorts can be done away with. So this is something to do with the protection for Hong Kong people as well as professionalism. We have put forth this issue to you. Some tour escorts don't have a full-time job, and travel agencies won't be able to do their work well. Only 4 minutes for you. We, of course, welcome the concept of guarantee money. One of the functions of the guarantee money is to provide immediate pay to the staff members involved if the travel agency collapses. We had 2 recent cases concerning the development of stakeholders in the industry. We're very concerned. We're concerned about tour guides and tour escorts. In our proposals, you can see a licensing system for both. Training will be helpful. And for the new TIA, there will be representatives from the tour guides and tour escorts. They'll be able to reflect the views of the industry in the TIA. We believe that that arrangement will be able to balance the needs of all developments. Is there room for further specifics such that we can require every tour group to be provided with a tour escort or a tour guide? I just need 1 minute. Well, we have a tight schedule today, and we only accord each member 3 minutes. Mr. Sin Chung Kai? Mr. Chairman, I think this issue has been dragged on for too long. We started this discussion in 2010. 3 years have elapsed. There are consultations after consultations. Now they say that they only introduced the legislation into LegCo in 2014. I don't know for how long this will be further dragged on. For the guarantee money proposed, there are not that many details in the paper. In the past, the compensation fund was mainly for outbound tour groups. For the new fund proposed, is it to protect Hong Kong people? Those are two different issues. For the development fund, it is for the development of the industry, and the compensation fund is for the users. So the nature of the two funds is very different. Here you say that a one-off grant will be given to the fund for the development fund. So compensation money will be used to develop the tourism industry? Is that what you mean? The compensation fund is sufficient for compensations. We're only using the surplus for development. It's very clear in the paper that to a certain extent, the company fund is funded by the industry. So to use it to fund the development of the industry is reasonable. I don't quite agree. I understand that the compensation fund was established with contribution from tourists or Hong Kong people joining outbound tour groups. If you're going to use any portion of the fund to fund the development of the industry, it's not that reasonable and fair. Earlier, we had the Egyptian incident, aircraft crash, etc. Should you shift the money like that? Do you have the power to do so? We do have the power to do so. You can go back to the laws. Under the law, the compensation fund is actually funded by the industry itself. So if there's any surplus, if we use it for the development of the industry, it's indirectly enhancing customer services. Mr. Michael Tan? Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask about the authorized representatives. In the past, if there were complaints from tourists, it's difficult to identify persons in charge for the travel agency, sometimes for several days. So you're proposing this representative system.
So this person must defend his reputation as well as caring very much about his responsibilities. But now, according to your paper, the AR should at least have Form 5 standard and 10 years of management experience, and there is no requirement of the AR being a director. So this AR can be any person. He may be instructed by his boss to become the AR. So there is no incentive for anyone to become an AR. On the other hand, unless he's awarded Medal of Honors, well, there's great pressure on the AR, and it doesn't help his career prospect either. And if the AR is disqualified, it greatly affects his prospect. So I'd like to ask about para 23B. An application for a travel agent license associated with a disqualified AR, so-and-so. Does that mean that once the person becomes the authorized representative, and then because of any misconduct, the AR is disqualified, this person will become unemployed? He will be unable to find any job with any travel agency. Does this paragraph mean this is very serious consequence? Secretary, thank you, Mr. Tian, for your question. Now, the functions of the AR is very important. According to our experience, during an untoward incident, the director of a travel agency or the shareholder of a travel agency may not be very clear in terms of the functions and responsibilities. That is why we have imposed this requirement of an AR. And as mentioned in the paper, in para 22, there are statutory duties. The AR should ensure adequate supervision of the operation, etc., for protecting the interests and safety of the traveling public. And the AR should also ensure that the travel agent is in full compliance with the licensing conditions, etc. Well, Secretary, you're just reading out the content of the paper. So my response is AR is absolutely necessary. The duties are very important. So in response to Mr. Tian's question, as in para 23, if the AR is disqualified, another person must take his place. But does that mean that person will be barred from taking similar jobs in the future? Well, as far as AR is concerned, of course, he's disqualified, so he's not allowed to take up any further job as an AR. But he can, of course, take up other positions. Correct. The person cannot, again, take up position as an AR to supervise the operation, management, and control of the travel agent. Simple question. One simple question. Does that mean no one will hire this person again? That depends on the position he's being hired for. If the duties involved are similar to those as an AR, then of course, and if this person is disqualified, this is of course one of our considerations. I think Secretary has already answered your question. If the person wishes to take up another position in a similar field, then he is barred from doing so. All right, I'll wait for a second round. No second round. I'm sorry. Ms. Yu Siwing, do you need to declare interest? I am a member of the TIC. Thank you, Chairman, for your reminder. About this Travel Industry Council, TIC, over the years, it has done a lot in protecting the interest of travelers and members of the public. Now, over the past 2 decades, I think their work is widely recognized. But the issue of self-regulation cannot be resolved. So that is why we need a travel industry authority, and the sector understands the situation. Now, in relation to mainland inbound tours, as in para 13, the guarantee money will be increased for travel agencies operating mainland inbound tours to $800,000. Now, I think it's problematic. It's according to the administration, there are 350 such travel agencies, but it's also very prevalent that many other local travel agents will be involved. So not just 350 existing travel agents. I believe out of the 1,700 local travel agents in Hong Kong, many of them will be involved in mainland inbound tour group business. If the guarantee money is increased to $800,000, it will stifle the sector. It will also limit the business of travel agents. So I think what you should do is to follow the practice in para 10. That is to say, only will the levels of fine be accumulated to a certain level, will a certain level of guarantee money be deposited. This approach is more practicable. That is to say, regardless of what kind of tour group business you're in, you will be accumulating fines for any breach, and only when you reach a certain level will you be required to pay the guarantee money. Now, I want to say something about the fund as well. Mr. Sin made a point just now, and I think there is a gray area in it. Well, very often the customers pay the levy as part of the fees, or taken out as a profit of the company instead of a separate levy. This is not clear in the legislation. So can this be clarified in the future so that the standard of the sector can be increased, and so that the sector can do more for the public? And now the balance of the fund stands at 570 million, and there is a lot of surplus. So I hope the administration will actively consider putting the money to good use. Secretary, about mainland inbound group tour business. We have consulted the sector many times before, and there are indeed a lot of problems. As I said in my opening remarks, for 8 travel agents operating mainland inbound tour group business, the guarantee money level is higher, but we think that this approach is better. We want to increase it or raise the threshold to ensure quality. For some travel agents, we understand that they will be facing more difficulties. We understand the situation, and in this consultation exercise, many small and medium-sized travel agents only provides lodging and accommodation or transport services for transit passengers. Well, for these travel agents that are engaged in these areas of businesses, they will not be subject to the new guarantee money requirement. And we will, as for the fund, we will utilize the fund to help the sector develop. Mr. Paul Chair, I have been advocating for the setting up of the TIA, so I welcome this proposal. A number of points. I think this is discriminatory. The first is about inbound and outbound tour group business. Now, there is different treatment for them, and all along we have heard the sector complaining about this unfair treatment. Very often, those travel agents which closed down, which caused losses to the public, are actually those operating outbound tour group. So what are you trying to achieve? Do you want to stop that by increasing the guarantee money? Well, because if you want to prevent untoward closing down of businesses, I think those operating outbound tour group business are more risky. So you need to think about your system. And the other point is that we have just passed the Trade Descriptions Amendment Ordinance, and there is wide concern about the tour package advertisements. Now, some sectors are better regulated, like professions like medical, legal industry, etc. They will be exempted because of a proper regulatory system within the sector. But for the travel industry, according to the administration saying no exemption will be granted because of the lack of a proper regulatory approach. All members of the sector would face a criminal liability as a result. Now, you have this proposal to regulate the industry, and we welcome this proposal. But now we have the new TDO. I think some coordination is needed. Do you need to make double effort to regulate the industry? I think certain adjustments have to be made. Point number 3, the TIC and the 8 affiliated chambers of commerce will not have any directly, or trade associations will not have any directly appointed seats. Well, after the setting up of the Travel Industry Authority, as the TIC is not a directly appointed member, there will be a drastic decrease in the number of members, and with some consideration be given so that a fair approach be taken, so that members would be selected or elected by trade associations within the sector instead of being appointed. For some measures like 48-hour confirmation, etc., well, these should also be amended. Mr. Frankie Yik. Can I lend Mr. Michael Tien my speaking time limit? Well, he will have his other round. Well, according to para 16, around 20% out of nearly 1,700 licensed travel agents indicated they're involved in the mainland inbound tour group business. According to the other member, almost half of them are engaged. And we understand that many of them are SMEs or even micro enterprises and family-based business. Well, if the guarantee money is increased to $800,000, this measure is really harsh. Has the administration considered that if this is implemented, that many such travel agents will be forced to close down because of their inability to pay the guarantee money of $800,000? And is this the most appropriate way to raise the standard of the sector? Secretary, we have received some views that there is a clear demand for the threshold to be raised under the new regime, because the threshold for operating a travel agent business at present is too low. Now, on the deposit of $500,000 or $800,000 as guarantee money, we need to use different treatments and impose different guarantee money requirements on travel agency operating different businesses because of the recent untoward incidents. And we want to have more flexibility. But we also welcome any other feasible proposal from the sector for our consideration. We have had a lengthy discussion with the sector. We find this approach the right balance to balance the interests of all parties. I'll invite the Commissioner to supplement my answer. Thank you, Chairman. About our investigation, before we discuss this proposal with the sector, we conducted an investigation or a survey, and according to the survey, the figure we got was 20%, and the data was objective on raising the guarantee money requirement in 2011. When we conducted this review and consultation, the sector also expressed a very clear view. In the long term, raising the threshold will enhance the standard of the sector and weed out unscrupulous practices. In the long term, this is beneficial for the sector. As for the guarantee money, I will continue to discuss with the sector, but at the same time, we also need to consider the views of the public, the Legislative Council, and the Hong Kong Tourism Board. One more point: we are not against enhancing the quality of travel agents. I asked whether raising the guarantee money requirement is the only means to achieve that, and how has this proposal been selected? Well, raising guarantee money requirement is not the only means. We also have inspection, and we also make extra effort in enforcing the guidelines, and we have a number of measures. Altogether, we hope that we'll be able to better regulate the industry. Next, Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. Thank you, Chairman. Well, I understand that the funding for the TIA in the future will come from the levy. So will the levy or stamp duty be increased because of the setting up of the TIA from 1.5% to a higher percentage? Second point, at present, the travel industry compensation fund comes from the sector, and I'm against that because the compensation fund actually comes from the levy, which is imposed on top of the tour fees. So the fees are borne by the consumers, not instead of the operation or the operating costs of the travel agencies. And now, if the compensation fund is to be transformed to the travel industry development fund, then I have a question: why are we using the money paid by or accumulated by from payments from customers in the past be used for the travel development of the travel industry? Can you explain to me the legal position of this matter? Can transfer be done in this manner? And as said just now, if the TICF is used to cover the payment for staff in the case of the travel agencies breaking or closing down, I think this is even more outrageous. So you should not just get your hands on funds without considering these points. I hope the administration will consider these points. 3 points. First, on the funding of the TIA in the future, we are not minded to increase the fee levels on the setting up of the TIA immediately. One point is that we are considering increasing the registration fee for inbound tours from the mainland from the current level of $20 per tour. because this level is very low, so we think that the appropriate level should be set at $200 per tour, to be fair. But in the long run, the TIA should run on a self-financing basis, and yet at the initial stage it cannot achieve that yet. So initially, funding allocation will be made to the TIA to ensure its proper operation. And the TICF and the Travel Industry Development Fund are two different things in nature. But as explained just now, the fund can be used as extra payments for travelers in the case of an accident. But this, and then point number 3. I'm sorry. What was question number 3?
The third question is this: where the development fund was set up, I think what was the legislative intent for setting up the fund? The legal definition said when incidents happen for outbound tours and regarding service of outbound tours. So I think the fund will deal with issues relating to compensation. Mr. Hon Tang Ka, the question is whether or not you can use that fund for other purposes. For example, converting it into a development fund. Mr. Hon Tang Ka, I think your time is up. Mr. Wuchiwai, thank you. I think my question is similar in nature. If I go to paragraph 37 of the paper, which is about the compensation fund, it is stipulated clearly that it should only be used for compensation should accidents happen in the course of a tour. I don't know why the purpose of the fund could now be changed. And secondly, if this compensation fund, I believe that even if you set up the new TIA, there is still a need to maintain the compensation fund. So I don't quite understand why under the new regulatory system you now have this balance which could be used for other purposes. Normally it should be go to the new TIA, which will use it for arrangements regarding compensation as required by law. My next question is that the financial arrangement for TIA is not very clear. You say that I think the amount would be a lot more than those of the TIC. So could you tell us for the proposed TIA, how much will be its operating cost? And if you only rely on increasing the registration fee for mainland tours, would that be sufficient? And also, would it be unfair? We don't understand. What we understand is that the registration fees for other tourist groups. I understand that the registration fee of $20 is too low. But what about the other tour groups? What is the registration fees? So when you next consider the operating income for the TIA, would that be something that you would take into consideration? Regarding the transfer of funds from the compensation fund to the development fund, it's a one-off transfer. The compensation fund will be used to make payment in the form of compensation. And we have conducted actuarial studies. I believe that there is a surplus, and that is why the amount is now transferred to the development fund to help the development of the industry. Regarding the budget for the TIA, of course, it would depend on the works and functions of TIA upon its establishment. The Commission already said that it will conduct, inspections, trainings, and so on. We will need to see how much resources it would need. Commissioner, thank you. Regarding the operation requirements of TIA and the funding requirements, we're still looking at that at the moment. Regarding its manpower provision, of course, we expect that it will be more than what is more than that of the TIC and the Tourism Registration Office. But regarding the exact amount of resources it requires, we're still studying that at the moment, and therefore today we are not able to give you a specific figure. But we must emphasize that we will provide sufficient financial resources to the TIA, especially at the initial stage, in order to cope with its operational needs. And because of that, we don't want to increase the burden on travel agencies. And that's why the government will provide the seed money for the TIA, so that at this initial stage of operation, the seed fund can, sustain its operation. But that seed fund will need to be approved by the Finance Committee. Mr. James Teen, Chairman. As the former Chairman of the Tourism Board, while I was chairman from 2012 to 2013, there had been many incidents involving tour guides, coerced shopping, and so on, and unfair treatment for tourists. Mr. Sin, as a member of the Tourism Board, knew a lot about these incidents, and therefore the Liberal Party supports the government proposal to set up the TIA. We believe that the TIC, however well it has done its job, it cannot, get away from the suspicion that it is, regulating itself. Regarding the timetable, I think the Commissioner and I know very well that we are now already 6 to 9 months behind, and I think the government should expedite its efforts here. Perhaps the government thinks that in the next 6 months, instances revolving tourists being cheated has declined, and it's because of that the government is now slowing down its pace. I think the government need to expedite the resolution of this problem. When the problem occurred at the time, I think the paper has not made reference to that. The so-called, package. When a tour arrives in Shenzhen, it becomes a zero or negative, fees, and the tour then come to Hong Kong. Many of the tour guides working in Hong Kong don't even know how to speak Cantonese, and they would cheat their own, fellow, compatriots. So you say that you propose that you require the travel agents to appoint an AR. It will be very easy for them to appoint a permanent resident in Hong Kong to become the so-called authorized representative, or the so-called authorized person. And the agent will allow you to suspend the license of an AR once every 5 years. Do you have an ultimate solution to resolve the problem arising from these so-called package tours? It's like restaurants. If there should be any, breach of the law, then the person in charge cannot become shareholders. So I think this could be a more viable solution to the problem. I'd like to ask the government whether it has the confidence that the problem of the so-called package tour could be resolved. The Liberal Party will support the proposed composition of the TIA, including lay members. We agree that there should be a few members. But Mr. Paul Chair also reminded us of the historical background, that we should not forget, overlook the need for representatives from the trade. Thirdly, I don't think that we should increase the government's guarantee money by so much. Initially, the government said that for tourist agents which operate like a family business, you still allow them to operate until something wrong happens. Of course, these tourist agents simply cannot afford $500,000. The trade accepts initially that they should be allowed to operate, but if anything should go wrong, the license will be revoked, instead of requiring them to pay $500,000 or $800,000, because that would actually be that mean that you favor the larger travel agents. Thank you, Mr. Tin. Of course, we need to consult the trade and the public. We understand it's these so-called package tour services. We need to tackle problems arising from that. So we need to adopt a multi-pronged approach to regulate the industry instead of relying on a single measure. We will also coordinate with the authorities in the mainland so that together we can tackle all these malpractices and that better service could be provided to consumers. Finally, I'd like to ask the Secretary this question. The TIA and the TIC, I think there are some certain gray areas regarding the terms of reference of the two. You say that you propose that conciliation should be relied upon to resolve disputes. If a certain travel agency is expected to have breached the rules, then will you still punish that agency if you go for conciliation? And how do you also determine on the fines? How much will be the fine in the case of a serious breach, and how much will be a fine for a minor breach? At the same time, I'd like to declare that I'm a shareholder and director of a travel agency. I think we need to consider that separately. The TIA, I think in the event of a tour agency breaching the rules, it will have to make a judgment. But for the consumers, that is for the consumers, if there are any disputes between the consumers and the tour agents, then we propose that there should be a conciliation mechanism, and the agency in breach of the rules will be dealt with by the TIA. I think I've heard from the trade that they may not totally understand this point. So if the Secretary or the Commissioner could, in the near future, explain this further to them, so that they can rest assured. I'd like to allow 2 minutes for the Commissioner and the Secretary to respond to some of the questions raised earlier, which I believe are important questions, and they were not able to give a detailed answer. For example, the trade description ordinance referred to by Mr. Poche and our proposal, whether there's any duplication between the two, and also the transfer of the compensation fund to the development fund. Now, before you respond, Mr. Poche, Chairman, I'd like to also declare that I am a director and authorized person of a licensed travel agency. I think these are important points. Perhaps the Secretary could also respond to Mr. Hon Tang Ka-piu and Mr. Poche's question. Chairman, I think our consultation on the new regulatory regime will need to balance the interests of all the stakeholders. We've actually conducted extensive consultation and believe that these proposals are acceptable by all the stakeholders, and we've balanced the aspirations of all the stakeholders. We've heard early on the comment that about the requirement for the compensation guarantee fund of $500,000 or 0.8 million. If there are any better proposals, we're willing to consider them together with the trade. Of course, we can't say that just because we now have the trade description ordinance and therefore we do not need to step up or enhance the regulatory regime. This is because healthy development of the tourism industry is very important for the economy. I think so we must focus. We therefore have the need for tailor-made regulations for the trade. While regulations are necessary, our intention is to enhance the development of the industry. For example, the tour guides, the tour escorts, and so on. All these elements we want to enhance our regulation so that together we'll be able to come up with proposals that can, facilitate the healthy development of the tourism industry. Well, in Hong Kong, we have different industries, and there are different ways of regulation for such industries. My question is whether there is any duplication here, whether or not regulation for some industries are too lenient, while for the others it's too stringent. Other than the tourism industry, I think we would need to communicate more with the other bureaus and so on, so that we will not, end up, favoring a particular industry. Perhaps the Secretary could go back and consider that. Certainly, we're willing to enhance, communication with the stakeholders. Mr. Paul Chair, I'd just like to seek some information. According to several the members who've spoken earlier, they have concerns about the nature and operation of the compensation fund. I know that there's been a lot of misunderstanding. Could the Bureau give us a paper at our next meeting in order to remove those misunderstandings? So could the Secretary please give us such a paper? So do members agree that we support the proposals? Yes. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank the three officials for attending our meeting. And the next item is the operation of the Kai Tak Cruise Terminal and the related arrangements. We have present for this item the Tourism Commissioner, Mr. Yong, and also Ms. Rosanna Law, Deputy Commissioner of Tourism, and Ms. Winnie Chan, Assistant Commissioner. First of all, Philip, could you walk us through the paper? Thank you. The paper involves two issues. First of all, we would like to report to the panel about the operations for the terminal after the berthing of the first cruise vessel on June the 12th this year. And secondly, we need to set up a restricted area in the terminal, which we have to do by way of a subsidiary legislation. On June the 12th, we had the inaugural berthing of the Marine of the Seas. The arrangements during the ship call were generally smooth. However, regarding the facilities and communication among different operating units, we believe that there is room for improvement. In the light of the experience, we've already conducted a review with the departments concerned, and see how we can do better when the next vessel arrives in October. And regarding the works at the terminal area, we've reported earlier that over the last few months there are still some outstanding works which need to be finished, including the external facade and also the roof gardens. I think work on those two projects will be expedited in the next few months. If the weather is not too bad, we hope that the roof garden will be able to be open to the public by September, October this year. Within the terminal building, we hope that the relevant retail outlets will be able to be commissioned for business. The second question is in respect of the need to come up with a legislative proposal to regulate the use of the terminal. Well, this is to ensure that we have the smooth operation of the terminal, as well as the safety of the vessels and the users of the terminal.
We made reference to cross-boundary control points, particularly at the Macau ferry terminal and the China ferry terminal. So we believe that a piece of subsidiary legislation is required to introduce this restricted area. to provide for space for customs clearing and immigration control. Now, all these are very important areas of terminal operation. So for the sake of passenger safety, by way of subsidiary legislation, will designate these restricted areas. So that's roughly the content of the paper. Questions are welcome. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, Mr. Christopher Chung, Mr. U.C. Wing would like to speak anymore. Mr. Paul Dare, Dr. Helena Wong, any else? Anybody else? Mr. Wu Chi-wai. 5 minutes each. Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Mr. Chairman, of course, after the trial berthing, the whole cruise terminal is actually in something like a suspension of operation. It will only be in winter that more cruises will be berthing there. Well, for several months every year, for example, for at least 5 months in the typhoon season, the cruise terminal may be laying idle. So, how will it be used? We do have some cruises that go outside of Hong Kong for just one night. Can they also use this cruise terminal? I don't know your arrangements. In future, what will happen? I heard that in the past, passengers had to take smaller boats out onto the cruise. On the 12th of June, after the inaugural berthing of Marina of the Seas, yes, in July, August, and September, we won't have any more cruises berthing at the terminal. Because of the typhoon season, less cruises will come into Hong Kong waters. The design of the terminal building has taken into account that factor. The waiting lobby is very spacious with no pillars and beams. This is to allow activities like exhibitions to be launched in the terminal building when no cruises are berthing there. That is to boost the usage rate. The TIC and the tourism industry are now preparing for a cruise expo in September, which will be launched in the Kai Tak cruise terminal. There are two aspects here. First of all, to make good use of the cruise terminal when no cruises are berthing there. Secondly, it is to promote cruise tourism, such that cruise companies, etc., will have more understanding of our terminal. In the long run, that will be conducive to our tourism industry development. Mr. Sin was concerned about gambling activities on certain cruises. We welcome all cruises to this terminal. All cruises are welcome to make use of Kai Tak cruise terminal. The more cruises berthing there, the better will the revenue be or proceeds be for the terminal. For such cruises, usually they have smaller boats to take passengers from public piers to the cruise concerned. They don't incline to berth at a cruise terminal. I believe the operators will focus on attracting these so-called mainstream passengers who focus on sightseeing in Hong Kong. So such cruises will tend to berth at the cruise terminal. Mr. Christopher Chung. Mr. Chairman, in paragraph 11 of the paper, something is mentioned about promotion. What about relaxation on the restrictions for mainland tour groups? These cruises must use Hong Kong as the starting port and the destination port. So mainland tourists who use Hong Kong as a stopover port will find our cruise terminal less attractive. So what about the promotion activities mentioned here? In June 2012, the administration announced some opening up measures. Mainland visitors, after completing their tour on Taiwan, will not be able to go to other destinations. Last year, the opening up measure announced was that after going to Taiwan, mainland visitors can go to, say, for example, Japan and Korea. This will be very helpful to cruise companies, such that cruises starting from our terminal can be more diversified and be more attractive to mainland visitors. As regards the implementation details, I understand that the bureaus and ministries of the mainland are still making preparation. I've reflected our aspirations and views on this to the mainland authorities. We would like the measures to be implemented as soon as possible so as to boost the attractiveness of our cruise terminal. If we want Hong Kong to become a cruise hub, the mainland market will be a main market for promotion. For example, Guangdong province has a population of 100 million people. Guangdong residents find cruise tours very attractive, and cruise tours are very attractive and new to them. So in Guangdong province, we've done quite a great deal of promotion work among consumers. The objective is to attract more Guangdong residents and those residents in neighboring provinces to join cruise tours. I've already said that in September, the TIC and the industry will launch a cruise expo with mainland participation that will also boost publicity and promotion. Besides, together with mainland travel agencies, we're examining how large enterprises on the mainland can use cruise tours as an incentive and reward for their staff members. So mainland passengers will become a main source of passengers for this cruise terminal. As regards the implementation of the opening up measures of the central authorities, we'll follow up on them. Have you assessed the actual timetable? By when will our requests be met? Mr. Chairman, for the time being, it's very difficult to tell the concrete timetable. There are a number of factors to be considered. The aspirations of the industry in Hong Kong are very clear. The mainland authorities also understand very well the expectations of the local tourism industry. And through the hard work of the administration and the TIC, we hope the measures can be implemented. Mr. Yu Si-wing. Thank you, Chairman. Concerning Mr. Christopher Chung's remarks, I believe the administration should work harder. We only see 20-odd cruises berth at the cruise terminal in the initial year. If more mainland passengers can go through Hong Kong to go to Japan and Korea, then it will be better. The administration should be more proactive. Together with cruise companies, it should liaise with the central authorities. It's easier for the administration to serve as a coordinator rather than having individual cruise companies to talk to the mainland authorities. So please be more proactive and work harder. Concerning legislation, I consider that necessary. The cruise terminal is similar to the airport. It should be equipped with customs clearance facilities and immigration control facilities, etc. So you should implement the whole series of arrangements as soon as possible. But why do you come so late? The cruise terminal is already in use. What about the management of the terminal? On what legal basis are you regulating the operation of the cruise terminal at the moment? The paper says that staff members of the hotel industry and travel agencies should not enter the restricted areas, but ancillary services like transportation of passengers to and from hotels, etc., are required. So I hope that in future for the restricted areas, designated units can have designated counters so as to improve our ancillary services. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for passengers to find servicemen. As for rodent control, in recent times we had more reports on rodents. I understand that at the cruise terminal at the moment, there are many terminal workers. After they finish with their lunch boxes, the lunch boxes are scattered everywhere, thus leading to rodent appearances. So don't allow rodents to infest, so to speak, the terminal. I'd like to thank the honourable member for his remarks. For the opening up measures by the central authorities, as I said when I answered Mr. Christopher Jung's questions, I already said that we would work hard for the implementation of the measures. As for our work plan, after this report to the panel, after the summer recess, when the LegCo resumes operation, will introduce the piece of subsidiary legislation to the LegCo that is subject to negative vetting. As for the other ancillary services mentioned by the honourable member, for example, how hotel and travel agency staff members can provide ancillary services, they're very important. At the moment, we have tourist inquiry counters. The terminal operator can discuss with the industry on issues like hotel booking, temporary measures, etc. I believe the terminal operator is very willing to talk to the tourism industry. As for rodents, during the construction period, the operator had attached importance to rodent control. Travel agencies and the terminal can collaborate to minimize rodent infestation. Of course, it's very important for workers to have their lunch. I understand that the terminal operator requires workers to handle their lunch boxes properly for fear of pest infestation. I hope that the terminal operations can be further improved in future. Mr. Pode, let me declare interest once again. I'd like to raise a few points for discussion. Just now, Mr. Yu Si-wing mentioned the regulation to be introduced. Earlier, we saw the confusion and dilemma resulting from the baby formula control. There were wrongful arrests. Now, in this matter, the terminal is already in operation. Why is it that the administration is still working on subsidiary legislation? There are certain areas in the terminal that are under nobody's control. If anything is to happen, how will that be handled? So a due approach should be adopted. That is, the administration should have introduced the subsidiary legislation earlier. The Tourism Commissioner may have the power to do something. But in future, I'd like to have a written reply on this delay. And then I'd like to talk about transportation and traffic and transport. The paper mentions confusion related to taxis. Unfortunately, foreign visitors had been cheated by unscrupulous taxi drivers. No matter how much publicity you do, once this sort of news is released, Hong Kong's image and reputation will be tarnished. I don't want to see a recurrence. Please do more. Please look at the airport and model on it. Paragraph 6 of the paper mentions the GMB going to Telford Gardens and the MTR station. Well, basically, that service is for locals, not for visitors. The Telford Gardens station has always been a very busy one. So what else can you do to ease traffic there? So don't let all traffic focus in Telford Gardens. Mr. Yu Si-wing also mentioned that he would like to see dedicated counters to facilitate the industry, hotels, etc. in the restricted areas of the terminal. In future, should we design the terminal with a cruise hub in mind, or you only expect visitors to stay for 1 or 2 nights only? If Hong Kong is to become a cruise hub, then there must be transportation services to the cruise terminal and the airport. And passengers should be allowed to buy admission tickets to certain attractions at the terminal. So when you design the counters, please think of all the details as well to see how in the long run the needs of the industry can be met. And very quickly, Mr. Chairman, let me say something about another TNT problem. We now only provide land transport. All along we've been saying that sea transport should also be arranged. Now for the smaller cruise companies with smaller cruises, can you also serve them? You should facilitate the visitors so that they can take smaller vessels to go to other points in Hong Kong or to the outlying islands. Thank you for the questions. The Kai Tak Cruise Terminal is a very important tourism facility, so we treasure very much councillors' views, which we'll certainly consider. We'd like to listen to more to your views, such that the cruise terminal can be further improved. To answer the members' questions, before the commencement of the subsidiary legislation, the Kai Tak Cruise Terminal is just like other ports in Hong Kong. That is, it has to follow Cap 5828 of the laws of Hong Kong, that is, merchant shipping, security of ships and port facilities rules in relation to the restricted area. That is, to protect the safety of passengers. In the paper, we also explain our views on TNT arrangements. For the GMB plying between Telford Gardens and the cruise terminal, the Kowloon Bay MTR station and Telford Gardens are relatively accessible, and the journey between the two and the cruise terminal is rather short. When activities are launched in the cruise terminal, we'll have special transport arrangements so that passengers won't need to focus on just one route. So we've heard the Honourable Member very clearly.
Information about tourist attractions and hotels. As said just now, we hope that the cruise companies will discuss with the sector on the particular types of services required at the cruise terminal, and they can work with each other in providing the services. In the long run, we hope that the cruise terminal can become a hub for cruise services. But whether Hong Kong is used as a berthing port or as the terminal, well, there will be surrounding commercial facilities and hotel facilities. So they will tie in with the development of the tourism industry. But of course, we need to wait for the Kai-Tak development area to be completed before this can be achieved. Thank you. Dr. Lena Wong. Thank you, Chairman. Now, I support the point raised by Mr. Paul Chair about vessels entering the Victoria Harbour. How these vessels or ferries can berth at the Kai-Tak cruise terminal for plying to other areas. For the Kai-Tak development area, well, the intake stage will start in the middle of August, and soon the population will increase. I suppose not only users of the cruise terminal, many local people or tourists would like to visit the Kai-Tak area as well, so there is a need. Now, on restricted area, I hear that legislation is necessary to restrict access by the public to certain areas within the terminal. So what about non-peak seasons when no super cruise liners are berthing at the cruise terminal? Can some flexibility be given so that the public can use the space in the terminal? Of course, we understand that when a cruise is berthed at the terminal due to security reasons, some areas must be restricted. Well, the cruise terminal is located in the center of the area, and many people are already practicing fishing in the vicinity, and we really hope that a flexible use of the space can be done. So please consider whether this can be open for public use, and in future, as far as the legislation is concerned, can the area can the restricted area can be confined to a certain area only, so that people will not be prevented from fishing in the vicinity. Now, third point, can you say something about switching to onshore power supply, because there is a residential population there. Commissioner. On sea transport, we're happy to discuss with the operator as well as the transport department on this matter. Now, if water transport or sea transport is provided for passengers of the cruise to reach different destinations in Hong Kong, I think this is a more viable option. It will not greatly affect the operations of the cruise, so this can be considered. As for sea transport as a regular passenger carrying service, I think we need to consider the need for this service, and the operators will also need to gauge the risk in running this service. There have been views all along, and we will continue to consider the proposal with Transport Department. Well, as mentioned in the policy address, for switching to onshore power supply at the cruise terminal, we're going to set up the relevant facilities. In fact, in the cruise terminal, at present, we have already reserved space for this facility. In developing tourism, we also attach importance to environmental protection. However, there is no international standard on onshore power supply. There is a standard for hardware, but not for software in the international arena. However, the EPD has already commissioned the EMST to conduct a feasibility study on installing facilities for onshore power supply at Tai-Tak Cruise Terminal. So this feasibility has already commenced, and once the feasibility study is completed, we will report back to panel members and we'll start the funding application process. We will continue to do that, and I'll defer to my colleague to say something about the use of the terminal space and whether we can allow for flexibility. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the member for the question. In fact, we discussed with the Council and the Drafting Division as we consider legislation. We try to confine the restricted area as much as possible. As mentioned just now, we're in the process of drafting legislation. There is a need for clarity for the demarcation of restricted areas. They must not be ambiguous. We've tried to confine the restricted areas as much as possible. Only those with genuine need will be restricted. For example, those the halls with customs clearance, with X-ray machines, etc. If these facilities are damaged, it will greatly affect the operation of the cruise terminal. As for the rooftop garden and the commercial facilities on the second floor, and also two waiting lounge or lobbies on the second floor, or exhibition areas within the terminal, they will not be within the restricted area. As for fishing, we cannot really open the area for fishing because there is no railing and the clearance is high, and within the terminal it will be difficult for us to open any area for public to practice fishing there. But and in the area there is a waterfront promenade and other areas. It's hoped that in the future the Kai-Tak development area will take care of the needs of in this regard. Ms. Wong Kok-heng, I have several questions for the administration. Now, this is it's not until the submission of this paper that we know about the subsidiary legislation. Can the administration explain to us why we aren't informed until this very late stage? The construction stage started long ago, but it isn't until now that you submit this paper asking for subsidiary legislation. The ocean terminal at the same time is also doing something about the cruise business. Hon Tang Ka-piu as well. Do they have subsidiary legislation? Can you explain to me? If they have subsidiary legislation, can that be extended? If they don't have subsidiary legislation, please explain to me the need for subsidiary legislation here. Second point. Well, after the birthing of the inaugural birthing of the first cruise, well, we got the experience when when a cruise is birthed, the terminal, there are customers for shopping facilities within terminals. Otherwise, their business is really bleak. We paid a visit there, and it's very spacious with a lot of shop spaces. But if there is no cruise there, then there are no customers. Unlike the ocean terminal and where you can see other ancillary facilities like hotel and retail and so on and so forth. There are many customers. However, for Kai Tak Cruise Terminal, once it's formally commissioned, if there is no cruise berthing at the terminal, I am concerned about the operating prospect of those retail operators there. Commissioner. Well, I will answer the first part of the question. I'll defer to my colleague to answer the second part. Mr. Wong is right. It's difficult to compare Kai Tak Cruise Terminal with the ocean terminal. It's been in operation for 50 years. Much has been done to have this achievement. Kai Tak Cruise Terminal is a new facility. We will need to wait for the completion of other facilities in Kai Tak before the synergy can be achieved. Within the terminal building, there is an area of about 6,500 square meters retail facilities. They will be situated inside the lobby and on both sides of the terminal. And for rooftop garden, once it's open for access, I believe this will be a spot not only for tourists and passengers of the cruise, but also for locals. And there will also be catering facilities at the rooftop garden, which can provide service for visitors there. As for the waiting areas along both sides of the terminal, we anticipate that their business to prosper when a cruise is berthed there, but and they will also patronize the shops on the second floor. On the whole, for the business strategy and on the leasing arrangements, I believe that consideration will also be given to the initial stage of the cruise terminal's operation. This is a business decision, but we hope that through the joint effort of the cruise terminal operator and shop operators, they will be able to provide quality service for tourists. As mentioned in Para 8, under the Immersion Shipping Security of Ships and Port Facilities rules, before the new legislation comes into effect, we will need to comply with the security requirements under this set of rules. I'll defer to Ms. Law for the other question. Now for Hon Tang and also the China Cam terminal, they rely on CAP 313, and under the same legislation, we enact subsidiary legislation. That's the same approach for ocean terminal. However, the approach is different. There is no immigration facility or customs clearance at the terminal. It's a private facility. It was established some time ago, and it has its own subsidiary legislation. It can require staff within the restricted area to either comply with the rules or to leave the area. As mentioned by the Commissioner just now, under CAP 582A, any cruise operator or terminal operator must follow the port facility security plan, and as the cruise terminal is a new facility and quite a major or large-scale facility, the inaugural berthing in June gave us very good experience on and advice on how the restricted areas should be defined without affecting the relevant parties. And now, even when cruises are berthed at the terminal. It will not affect the operation of the terminal. I hope this will address the concerns of members. I'm sorry, time is up. Just one more? No, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you. Chairman, just now the administration reported to us that there are no immigration facilities at the Kai-Tak, at the Ocean Cruise Terminal. Now, is it totally unviable if we have a similar arrangement at Kai-Tak? Now, the annual, according to the paper, the annual operating expenditure amounts to $22 million. Now, of course, now it seems that you incur quite substantial losses, and who will pay for the loss? WTC, well, is there a 5-year plan? Just now, Commissioner, you talked about a number of proposals, but you have no idea of the details. We want to know, however, whether there are any plans and whether there is any support. Now, it's also suggested that the cruise terminal would eventually be developed into a port, namely that Hong Kong will become the mother port or the destination. I wonder if if there is any plan from the administration side in this regard. Now, about legislation, I will defer to Ms. Law. I will take the remaining part of the question. Operating costs, the figure quoted by the member includes the staff deployed or the expenditure involved in deploying staff to the terminal by the Immigration or the Customs and Excise Department. Apart from rental income, the government also receive a share of the revenue of the terminal. As far as revenue is concerned, we also looked at the overall economic gain or the economic benefit that the terminal will bring to Hong Kong. Now, in this regard, we have a management committee of the terminal, and the terminal operator will also need to communicate with the sector through this platform. So, for issues in the medium or long term, we can discuss all the issues relevant to the terminal, and there is also a chance for the operator to understand the needs and demands of the sector, so that these needs and demands can be addressed. And I would defer to Ms. Law to answer the other part of the question. Ocean Terminal. As the member correctly puts it, there is no immigration or customs clearance facilities. Now, at the Ocean Terminal, Kai-Tak Cruise Terminal has a very different design. For Ocean Terminal building, there was no consideration of it as a home port. So if it's used for transit purpose, and that the cruises will only be berthed at the terminal for 1 or 2 days, no immigration formalities would be required. No loading or unloading of luggages would be required. So that is all these were because there was no consideration of using Ocean Terminal as a home port. Whereas for the Kai-Tak Cruise Terminal, we do have this consideration. We want to develop the cruise terminal as the home port for cruises, and that is why we need all the facilities. this will allow those cruise passengers to set off from Hong Kong, and they need to go through formalities for immigration clearance, and also to pick up their luggage, and that is why, unlike Ocean Terminal, we have all the facilities. Last member, Mr. Wong Ting Kwong, I'll draw a line here.
I think people have great expectations for this new cruise terminal and its facilities. I understand that at the initial stage of its operation, there are bound to be some hiccups. I hope that the Bureau will make improvements as soon as possible. The cruise terminal as such a good project. It's now contracted to the operator, and I don't think the Bureau can directly manage the facilities. But I would like to suggest this to the Bureau. For example, in the new cruise terminal, when the Hon Tang terminal was first commissioned, they offer rental concessions to the operators there, and also attract some international brands to operate at the terminal in order to improve the foot traffic. And also, could you also liaise with the Transport and Housing Bureau and operate some PLBs going to the cruise terminal, and not just during the times when the vessels berth, and that the public can use the facilities there. You have a roof garden there and other facilities, as well as restaurants and shops, or even a cinema. These are facilities that you can include, you can consider putting in the terminal. I think we should make good use of resources. I also like to ask the Bureau, if it's possible, to organize another visit for us to the terminal at a time when a cruise is berthed there. Chairman, I recall that we've actually visited the cruise terminals in other countries, and we also visited those terminals when vessels were berthing, and we saw how what their customs clearance procedures are like, and so on. So I'd like to also visit the Kai Tak Cruise Terminal at a time when the passengers, embark and disembark from the vessels. I think we can go there as, ordinary members of the public. Thank you. Well, there are three questions. First of all, the rental arrangements. I've already reported earlier to members that the operator is now inviting tenants to move into the commercial area. I'm sure those who are interested will look at the rental arrangements. For example, as Mr. Wong suggested, the operator can consider offering some concessions. I'm sure the operator will consider that in the light of the market's reactions. And I'll be happy to relay member suggestions to the operator. And secondly, on transport arrangements, this is also an area of concern for members. And I hope that we have told members that we are also attaching importance to that, and we are, and that for both the local residents and the tourists, we want to come up with the best arrangements. Whether there are oceans vessels berthing there or during holidays, we will, deal with the transport arrangements carefully together with the transport department. Regarding visits to the terminal without affecting the operations of the cruise terminal, we'll be happy to, after the terminal has been in operation for some time, I'll be happy to invite members on another site visit. Members suggested that we should visit as in the guise of an ordinary members of the public. I also like to welcome members to join can actually take part in one of the tours of these cruises. Mr. Wong, I think many people will recognize you. Now, to sum up, I fully agree with the suggestion by Mr. Cheng Wah Kong and Mr. Yu Si Wing that the terminal, Hong Kong should become a home port for these cruise terminals, especially for given the shortage of berthing space in the mainland. Earlier on, I made the same suggestion, and I hope the government, the SAR government, will talk to the state national bureau, the tourism bureau, and have a reply as soon as possible, because this really can go a long way in helping attract more tourists coming to Hong Kong. The commissioner also said that he wants to use part of the terminal areas for exhibitions purpose, and I fully agree with that. But if we're going to organize such activities, the transport arrangements will need to be well in place. And you also need to allow the participants or the exhibitors to have parking facilities, car parking facilities. There are only 126 car parking spaces in the whole terminal. Ocean Terminal has a lot more than that. So I think this is a major issue. You are now developing laterally. Have you considered the possibility of building a public car park there, especially after the park's been completed? Many people, I'm sure, would want to go there to enjoy the scenery, or last time we went to the visit the ocean, to the cruise terminal, when I look out from the terminal towards the harbor, I thought that it was really a beautiful scene. Also, when you look out towards Lei Yun Moon during the sunset. Mr. Hon Tang Ka-piu mentioned that earlier on we visited some of the terminals in Europe and the States. And in fact, they have done a very good job. When the cruises actually berth and leave the terminal, they would inform the transport departments, and the taxis can line up a few minutes beforehand at the terminal. And of course, you need to have sufficient space for the tourist coaches to load and unload the passengers. All these will need to be arranged. Timing is also very important. If the cruise were to berth at 6:30 and the passengers would leave the cruise at 8 p.m., it might be difficult for the passengers to find a taxi, because taxis may prefer picking up business elsewhere. So the arrangement may not be so good. So we're not just talking about local transport. Normally the cruise will berth early in the day, but I don't think we should just assume that and things work out by itself. You need to come up with the proper arrangements. Regarding the minor hiccups at the initial stage of the terminal's operation, I mean, it's like the airport. I think it also suffered from some minor hiccups at the initial stage. But I hope that all these problems could be resolved as soon as possible. So, Mr. Commissioner, could you tell us, I think many members have mentioned the transport problem. How can you ensure that the transport arrangements for the terminal will be convenient, and also for members of the public who want to go to visit the roof garden or to attend exhibitions and so on. How do you propose that we can perfect the transport arrangements? Thank you. I think in order that the cruise terminal could operate efficiently and that for it to become a home port, I think this is also our objective. We will attach importance to the various suggestions by different members. Chairman, regarding the transport issue, at the cruise expo to be held in September, and also when the next cruises which will berth at the terminal later, we will certainly, come up with, a good transport arrangement together with the transport department. Every time a vessel berths at the terminal, we have to ensure that transport service is provided to the passengers, and in future, once the PLB bus services commission, we hope that can help improve the situation. So taking all those together, we hope that the transport arrangements, facilities for the future terminal will become more and more convenient. Once again, I'd like to thank the panel for all your valuable inputs, in light of which we will try to make further improvements. Thank you. Finally, I'd like to invite members to endorse the recommendation in the legislative proposals as contained in the paper. Mr. Poche, if I refer to paragraph 8, the Bureau mentioned several times the security facilities. I'd like to know whether or not you have a security plan already. If so, could you please give it to us for reference? The Commissioner said that you're now working on the basis of the existing ordinance. Why is it that we still don't have the bylaws? Deputy Commissioner, it's already being done. Yes, Mr. Chairman. The security, regarding the security plan, so every time a vessel berths, we need that. We had a plan for that in June. And back in March, we also had a temporary plan. As to whether or not this plan can be disclosed to the public, I would need to consider it further, because it has something to do with our, security responsibilities. We will not be able to disclose that to members. I will need to go back and check further. So once again, I'd like to ask whether members support the legislative proposals as stipulated in the paper. I think we are all in support of the paper. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank the three representatives for attending our meeting. We have a very long meeting. We have a 4-hour meeting, so perhaps at this point we can